You know what? I'm just gonna go ahead. I'm gonna end these, man. Let's see what that happens, man. All right. All right.
Maybe that's the issue. Maybe multi-streaming is kind
Yeah,
of,
maybe it's the
maybe it's
multi-streaming.
because it's multi-streaming is kind of that's probably it.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna have to go straight through YouTube unless I can figure this out. I have no idea.
Because as soon as you drop those other streams, the YouTube stream came back.
Yeah, it's probably up now. Yeah, but see, this is a whole brand new stream now. This is a whole brand new stream.
So welcome to the new stream, whoever's
Yeah.
here.
We're gonna stop doing that. Hold up, but see, you know what? It's still.
It's still on the other stream.
Yeah, I think we would have to restart the program, and I'm not doing that right now. It always happens at least like one time, and then after that, it's good. I don't understand why that happens. But
So we're hoping that the people who are on the other stream
yeah,
kind of hop on to this new one, got the
Right.
notification, hopefully.
yeah, we apologize for all these technical issues that we've been having for seems to be what the last 2 or 3
2
weeks.
or 3
now.
weeks. That we were not having before.
Weren't happening at all. Something
you know what?
changed in the something changed.
I suspect it's the multi-stream.
Yeah, it
But
could be.
we've always been
We
multi-stream.
always had that, and there was no problems. It always happened seamlessly. There was no problems. I don't understand what the problem is now.
Like my first inclination is the fact that we multi-stream, but that can't be it. Seeing as we were multi-streaming for so long without an issue. So
We're gonna kill the multi-streaming from now on and just broadcast right through YouTube and see if that will clean it up. I have no idea why this is happening, but yeah, we'll try. You know what, and that'll be easier because I don't think I can do it through. I can do some testing, but anyway, only through YouTube, really. But anyway, all right, so let's keep going. We were talking about this Mueller investigation. So right after the summary of the findings were made public by Barr, President Trump declared that he was exonerated. And in a statement, he said, "This was an illegal takedown that failed, and hopefully somebody's going to be looking at the other side." Now, there's a lot to that I do not understand. Illegal takedown, that doesn't make any sense because it was an investigation. It was not illegal. So I don't understand. And it wasn't a takedown either because he hasn't been taken down.
it hasn't been.
So that doesn't make sense. And then the end of it saying that hopefully somebody's going to be looking at the other side. What side started it?
He's probably talking about
What are you talking
this
about?
so-called wiretapping. Remember the wiretapping that he said Obama ordered, but that's already been debunked. But here's my thing: if there's a kind of somebody who's associated with your campaign that knows about a hack before said organization would be the DNC, if they know about the hack, or this person that's on his campaign knew about the hack before the DNC, yeah, the FBI should investigate that. And if there are members of his campaign that lied about some meeting, regardless of if it amounted to anything, there should be an investigation. I'm sorry. You can not trust the FBI or you want to. I mean, it's legitimate. If you have someone who's a part of your campaign team that doesn't disclose to the Department of Justice that they were lobbying on behalf of another country or another entity, that needs to be investigated.
Sure.
If someone else on your campaign team was paid, I don't know, over almost $500,000 for work or lobbying work for Turkey, then that needs to be investigated. That's talking about Michael Flynn. He also was a part of some sort of, I guess, kidnapping plot too, to bring somebody back to like a Turkish prison. He was supposed to be paid $15 million for that. Rick Gates as well. He and Manafort solicited a DC-based company to lobby for entities overseas in Ukraine, and that was not reported either. They actually started a front business to launder the money to get paid, or to get paid. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff that went on that got uncovered due to this investigation. There's a lot of things that have to be investigated. Papadopoulos, an aide, he lied to the FBI. You lie to the FBI, you get investigated. So it's not. I just don't understand. He's making it like there's nothing there.
Well, okay, so the start of this investigation, of course, was about possible Russian collusion, and there were many people that, I guess, discounted that was like something that actually happened. They questioned if that was a reality or anything like that. We never really went as far as to saying that it was legitimate or not, because how could you possibly know? There was no way to possibly know if it happened or not. I think it's I guess reasonable to suggest that it could have happened and reasonable that it didn't happen. So we don't know. But the one thing that we always push back on, which a lot of people did as well, was that the possible Russian collusion got in the way of Hillary Clinton's campaign and got in the way of her actually winning the election. Now, we always push back on that. I don't believe that anything that happened got in the way of Hillary Clinton becoming the next president of the United States. No, she lost because of other things. She lost by the things that she didn't do, the things that she was as a political candidate. You could ramble off many different things that led to her defeat, but I don't believe it was the Russian collusion. But it seems as though that sticking point right there is what gets people all worked up. The fact that it didn't hurt Hillary Clinton, and I guess there were some people, not a lot of people actually, that were saying that it might have, means that the validity of the whole investigation was nonsense. And that's not true. Like you just said, there were many things. This wasn't a witch hunt because there were many witches. There were many witches to capture.
It's one of those things where if they go into an investigation because I guess one crime is suspected and then 36 to 60 other crimes are discovered because of that investigation, to say that investigation didn't amount to anything is a bit nonsensical.
It was fruitful, but look, at this point, we don't know what the full report looks like. It has not been released, so those who are claiming exoneration, the president himself and people that support the president, you're a little bit too early. But what is interesting is that this whole thing was deemed as something like, and Trump already said that, like, you need to look at the other side. He always talked about the angry Democrats, angry Democrats, the 12 angry Democrats. He talked about the FBI being corrupt to the highest levels. He talked about all these different things. So it would occur to me that if that was actually the case, and these entities and these individuals, these agents were actually just trying to get him, then why didn't they? Why didn't they? If this was a partisan attack, why didn't they why didn't they get him? Why didn't they come back with something like, hey, you know what? Trump is guilty of this. Trump is guilty of that. It seems as though, again, we don't know that the summary is accurate because we haven't seen the full report. But if it is accurate, if Barr's words are accurate and Mueller didn't find any instances of Russian collusion and he didn't find something that would lead to obstruction of justice concerning Donald Trump, it just doesn't seem like this was the level of attack that President Trump and others suggested it was.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think many times we've spoken on the show about how this investigation has been framed, particularly by Trump and his administration, as a attack levied by angry Democrats. And unfortunately, and inadvertently, I think a lot of people on the left and progressive carry that mantle without even knowing it. Because what you will hear is people say, well, Russiagate was a result of the Democrats losing the election. It's something that they started. And I think that's kind of an easy line to draw. They lost, then this whole hacking thing came about. I think it's an easy line to draw to say, oh, that's just the Democrats being mad that they lost. But unfortunately, people have not explained how a narrative translates into an actual investigation. That's not how things happen, because political narratives aren't new. Narratives are a part of politics. They don't always result in an investigation. So there's a big gap there from some narrative that the Democrats and DNC started to an actual investigation and a special counsel being assigned to investigate that. That's not how it happens. I just think that, just like many people, we were hurt after the Democratic primaries was over. And just like many people, we were looking for a reason and trying to like piece things together for ourselves. Unfortunately, what happens is people try to piece things together in isolation, in a bubble, without looking at anything surrounding that, because we want to figure out and find a reason why the DNC and the Democrats cheated Bernie. So I think it's understandable. But I have one item that kind of disproves that this whole hacking narrative originated with the DNC and originated with the Democrats. And I'm not going to do the work for you, but I implore you to go to C-SPAN, and look up Mike Pompeo, type in the keywords security policy, event, Foundation for Defense and Democracies. This was like a couple years ago. This is Mike Pompeo. He was CIA director at the time. He is now the Secretary of State. Go on C-SPAN, look that up, please, and unhide all the text from the transcripts, and then do a search for the page and type in Russia and see how many times Mike Pompeo, Trump's own CIA director at the time and current Secretary of State, mentions Russia and mentions Russian hacking going on before the primaries. That's Trump's guy. So my point is the whole Russian hacking narrative came from the intelligence agencies and not from the DNC and not from the Democrats. Where do you think they got the idea from is what I'm saying. So.
All right. So look, it's a story that is going to continue again because, of course, there's going to be an effort to get the full text of this report. And I don't think it's going to stop until it is made public. So we'll leave it there for now. All right. Let's go to ACA. In December, a federal judge in Texas made a stunning decision regarding the Affordable Care Act. U.S. District Judge Reed O'Connor ruled that the individual mandate was unconstitutional and therefore the entire law should be struck down and should be deemed unconstitutional. That decision was surprising to even the Trump administration, who was not arguing that the entire law be ruled unconstitutional. They were arguing to make the individual mandate continue to be unconstitutional. As you recall, during the, late 2017, because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, they provided a provision that indeed did strike down the individual mandate. Even though the Trump administration was not arguing for that, this court held that it was unconstitutional and should be struck down in its entirety. So fast forward to Monday, the Department of Justice announced that it agreed with that decision now, and that the entire ACA, the Affordable Care Act, should be deemed unconstitutional. Now, I guess this is a little bit odd. And actually, I shouldn't use the word odd, because I don't find that the Republican Party does really care about healthcare in this country, and the healthcare of many of the United States people. I don't really feel like they really care about that too much, just judging their actions and their attitudes. But it's interesting that this would happen right now. President Trump and the Republican Party have been arguing for years that they intend to protect the pre-existing conditions. They want to protect people with pre-existing conditions. They want to make sure that those particular people indeed have health coverage. If you get rid of the entire ACA, you're removing millions of people off of healthcare, because these private health insurers would have the ability to now kick them off and not provide coverage for that specific ailment that they may be experiencing. That they might be whatever ailment that they have. So the idea that Republicans care about people and they care about healthcare in this country, again, I don't think there's any evidence to that. But the second thing about why this is interesting, why this would be interesting now that this is happening right now, is you're going to be, just a few months ago in November, we had the midterms. And the House of Representatives was won by the Democratic Party. They made huge gains in November. And one of the central issues that they ran on, many of these Democratic candidates, they ran on the issue of healthcare. And many of them across the country backed something like Medicare for All, which would expand healthcare coverage, of course. And the Republican counterparts did not run on that. So it seems to be that they paid the price for that. So now it seems that you're going to be tasking the Republican Party, many of these Republicans that are already in office, you're going to be tasking them with defending the idea that pre-existing conditions should not be protected. Now, this, again, the Republican Party is going to be making a move to recapture the House of Representatives. And it seems that the Trump administration is making that even harder for them to do that.
Okay, so what you're saying is if the Republicans were really interested in providing some sort of health care to Americans, that would have been an issue that they would have run on during the midterms. And since they did not, what makes people think that Trump's word is valuable or means anything when it comes to his, I guess, claims of providing a better plan than the Affordable Care Act?
It's there's no evidence. Like you said, there's no evidence that they actually intend to do anything like that.
Okay. So what is kind of the lowest common denominator as to why, I guess, this is being upheld? The lowest common denominator as to why this is being upheld. Who benefits from this?
Who benefits?
Yeah, who benefits from this?
That would be the private healthcare industry.
Exactly. Like, if you don't have to cover pre-existing conditions, that means that alleviates you from risk, alleviates these companies from having any risk or having to shell out money. And their primary goal is to make money and not provide health care. That's the problem. That's why we need Medicare for All, because that overhead will be cut out. That overhead will be straight cut out.
Now, Trump today, on Tuesday, made a very interesting comment, and he was stopped by reporters. And of course, he was asked about the Mueller investigation and his reactions to the summary that was delivered by the Attorney General Barr. But he was also asked a question about about the ACA and the newfound position of the DOJ that they agreed with that lower court ruling that the entire ACA should be ruled unconstitutional. This is what President Trump said.
Let me just tell you exactly what my message is. The Republican Party will soon be known as the party of healthcare. You watch. Thank you.
Will and I have had this discussion many times. And leading up to the 2020 elections, presidential elections, we were both wondering, what each party would try to present, right before the election. We know it's coming. What each party is going to do to sell themselves to the American people leading up to the election.
Right.
And primarily, we were kind of more worried about Donald Trump and the Republicans, because it does seem like the Democrats, or for the most part, have kind of solidified what they're going to use, what issues they're going to use to present to the American people. And for the most part, these first 2 years of the Trump administration, he hasn't proved a lot. He hasn't proven a lot. So he's going to have to kind of reach into his duffel bag somewhere, just reach deep down inside and pull something up before the election to even sell to the American people that his first year wasn't a bust. First 2 years wasn't a bust, or first 4 years wasn't a bust when it gets to that point. So if what he's saying is true, I guess my inclinations tell me that they're possibly going to roll something out. I'm not saying I believe it, but I think that's something that has to happen now that he has said it.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? They have to roll out something better. Now, do I believe they'll roll out something better? No. They may roll out something and present it as better, kind of like how they did with the tax reform bill, Tax Cut and Jobs Act.
See, I'm just not sure that they're actually going to roll out anything. They had a supermajority in Congress before.
Right.
They had the House.
Right.
They had the Senate.
Correct.
They had a Republican in the Oval Office.
That is correct.
And we saw nothing on that front. All they wanted to do was repeal Obamacare, but the whole replace part, they didn't really get around to that. They just wanted to repeal it. So I'm left with, okay, Donald Trump's words. Soon the Republican Party will be known as the party of healthcare. I don't know how, we have problems with the ACA. Many people have problems with the ACA, and rightfully so. If you want to provide something that is better, then you don't need to scrap the ACA to do that. You would just create some type of idea. You would get together with like minds or whatever, people that support your ideology and your, I guess, in your agenda, the way you want to go forth and do things. You would get together with those minds and present something that would actually benefit the American people.
It's just, man, whatever the plan they have might be secret, man. They just don't want the plan to get out, and the Democrats steal their thunder. Maybe that's the plan. They hashing the plan out in secret, man.
But wouldn't it have been better to actually put that plan out while you had a Republican House and a Republican Senate, so that the Republicans could effectively pass this legislation and dismantle the ACA, because this is so much better.
Maybe they're playing that same game. I'm walking out on a very, very, very thin limb here, a thin branch. Maybe they're trying to play that same game that Democrats play. Maybe they're calling the bluff. Yeah. What if they present something knowing that they don't have control? You know what I'm saying? Then they try to pass it, and then the Democrats take the bait and find a way to stall it, and they get blamed. I don't know if the Republicans are willing to call the Democrats bluff like that, because we talk about that all the time.
Right.
If the Democrats were really interested in passing something, they would have kind of stuck their chest out when they had control for all those years.
That's true.
So maybe Republicans are playing that same game. I just don't think they're willing to play chicken like that. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
So this is Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, and he said on the floor of the Senate, the Trump position ties a 2-year anchor around the neck of every Republican for the next 2 years. Yet again, they will be forced to defend the indefensible. It's a stark reminder of the difference between our two parties. So like I said, this is going to be something, if this is truly their position, that the ACA should be deemed unconstitutional and pre-existing conditions effectively will not be protected, either they do create something that is to the benefit of all people, and they protect pre-existing conditions, or they're going to be faced with the reality of running these candidates that are running for re-election, and new Republican candidates that are trying to overtake or try to help overtake the House from the Democratic Party. They're gonna have to run on something like this because the Trump administration backs this idea.
They're gonna have to.
They have to.
Because if the party is known for that, that has to be an issue that they campaign on and run on.
And then you have to sell it as a good idea.
Whew. Well, I tell you what, they would blow my mind.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a completely different reality, okay? This will be in a completely different reality in another world. If that happens, would that change your view of the Republican Party? That one thing. This just hypothetically, if that actually happened.
So
you can't even use it.
So you got to say it, because I can't just assume what you're saying. So if they actually present something that's, are you saying better than the ACA?
Medicare for all. I know. I know it's a stretch.
Come on.
But if what he says is true, that's what it would have to be.
Yeah, you're right.
That's what it would have to be. It would have to be something better than what progressive Democrats are presenting right now. So if that happens,
well, that's not a reality.
No, that's not.
That's not even reality.
That's not the question. We're not in this reality.
You're asking me like, hey, if money falls from the sky,
Nah, dog.
will I be happy about it?
See, why isn't Will trying to play my hypothetical game? He's scared to answer. You see this right? He's trying to avoid it.
It's ridiculous. They would not be the Republican Party
yeah.
anymore. You're talking about a party that would not be the Republican Party anymore. They would give up being the Republican Party at that point. You're telling me that's the reality? Or that's
I didn't say
possible?
that. I didn't say that was possible, nor did I say that was a reality. I said we're in a different reality. We're in an alternate universe.
We're using alternative facts.
Yes, we are. Thank you. Exactly. In a Kelly and Kanye world.
Yes. No. That's my answer. I wouldn't support the Republican Party. That would be fool's gold.
But you would support the Republican Party on this issue.
Yes.
But it wouldn't make sense unless they supported that issue and then brought other progressive issues with them.
Right.
You just can't.
They're just not going to transform it to something
You wouldn't
else.
just cherry pick that one issue and be like, we're for it.
Again, they would be transforming into something else. In 2019, we know that this Republican Party is far right. To hop on to something that is deemed to be far left? Oh, please, no. That's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Until and when they feel that their future is in jeopardy, like the future of the Republican Party is in jeopardy, that's the only way they make actual moves like that.
Oh, when their back is against the wall.
That's the only way.
All right.
All right. So in a connected story, on Tuesday, House Democrats unveiled legislation to improve healthcare in this country. So I know what you might be thinking. This must be Medicare for all because the way the country is moving, many people are supporting that type of legislation, Medicare for all. There's a new caucus in the House, the Medicare for All caucus, that was started last summer in 2018. It has over 70 members. We have multiple Democratic presidential candidates that are supporting the idea of Medicare for all. So that would be, I guess if the Democrats are trying to do something to advance healthcare in this country, it would have to be Medicare for all. That is not what happened on Tuesday. So the legislation that they put forth is all about strengthening the ACA by protecting people with pre-existing conditions, and it's about lowering costs as well. So this is from CNN. Tuesday's House bill calls for increasing subsidies and allowing more middle-class Americans to qualify. It would also provide additional funding for states to implement publicly backed reinsurance programs, which reduce premiums by shielding insurance companies from high-cost enrollees. Oh, I have a quote for you as well. Can't forget the quote. This is from Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. And she said, I believe this was in a statement, she said, as we mark the 9th anniversary of the Affordable Care Act, we reaffirm our commitment to this fundamental truth, that healthcare must be a right, not a privilege, for all Americans. It's a nice statement. It's a nice statement.
I saw the word middle class in there. Mm-hmm. That's great, though.
That is.
That's great. That's great that
you like that.
That's great that they're worried about the middle.
Right.
It makes it seem very reasonable.
Uh-huh.
What about poor people, though?
Yeah, what about poor
They
people?
specifically mentioned the middle class.
They
but
did.
that can mean anything, because the middle class to them and people like Pelosi, from what I understand and have heard them say, it's like people who make $250,000 a year. $200,000 a year, $400,000 a year.
That doesn't feel like middle class to me.
That's middle class to them.
It doesn't feel like middle class to me, though. Like, that's not middle class to me.
Because it ain't.
You know how you can tell when somebody's full of shit? You know how you can tell? Especially if you're talking about legislation and you're talking about Congress members. Mm-hmm. You're talking about the Democratic Party. You know when you can tell when they're full of shit? When they have a supermajority, right? We just talked about this earlier in this program. Right. So when they had a supermajority, when they had a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and they had Obama in the Oval Office, we wondered why they didn't do things like the public option when it concerns healthcare. We wondered why they didn't do anything about gun control in this country. But then when they lost one of those chambers, they engaged in the sit-in. right? And they're like, oh, yeah, we're not leaving until we do something on, on gun control. It's like, okay, you're doing this all for theater.
It does make them look like they're kind of being extra, like
Yeah.
pouting like babies.
Right. Now, on this front, the Democrats have control of the House.
Correct.
They do not have control of the Senate. So we know that whatever they're trying to get done here with the ACA, it's likely not going to get passed by the Senate. Okay? So if you want to grandstand, why not grandstand big? Why not grandstand big? Why not advocate for people in this country and go in the direction that it seems most people are going in terms of healthcare?
Maybe I'll give you a kind of a counterpoint. I guess the Democrats' effort to keep the Affordable Care Act alive is kind of connected to the Democrats trying to scrap it. It gives them the excuse to protect the ACA. As long as Republicans are constantly trying to scrap it, it gives Democrats an excuse to protect it and make it look like they're trying to help people. And I don't think that this announcement is separate from the previous story we covered. With the Department of Justice declaring that the ACA is unconstitutional.
Right.
I think these two things are not separated.
Right.
And so again, I think the Democrats are trying to make themselves look like the good guys here, and they kind of do. Now to us, we can see through that. But the most people, they're like, oh, damn Democrats, they're trying to protect the ACA. Thank God for them.
But see, you can do more than one thing at a time, especially when you are in the United States Congress. There's multiple areas where you have to focus your attention. So if you want to defend the ACA, which again, we have problems with the ACA. It didn't go far enough. It didn't cover everybody. And that's what we're trying to get done in this country, 100% coverage, right? So it didn't do what it was intended to do. So we want more. We don't think that it should be dismantled because it is working for many, many people, and many people, millions of people got coverage. Many people with pre-existing conditions got coverage. So while we're on this road to a better future, while we're on this road to something like Medicare for all, we need to keep the ACA in place so that the people that have coverage because of it will remain covered.
Yeah, because what are they gonna do in between that gap? What are they gonna do in between that gap?
So it's a good position. It's a good position from the Democratic Party to fight for the ACA and to defend it from Republican attempts to dismantle it. But when that's all you're doing, when that's all you can do, and you can't fight for something like Medicare for all, you seem phony. You seem phony. All right. Where do you want to go? Let's go to we can go
to SLAP, or we can go to
either SLAP
Pentagon,
either SLAP or let's go to
Pentagon
Pentagon first. That's not gonna be too long. All right. So on Monday, Acting Secretary of Defense Pat Shanahan agreed to direct $1 billion from the Pentagon to construct about 57 miles of wall along the southern border. This is, of course, in regards to the state of national emergency that was declared by President Donald Trump. House Armed Services Chairman Adam Smith wrote in a letter on Tuesday following this news. And I believe I have that. No, I don't have that. He said, quote, "The committee denies this request. The committee does not approve the proposed use of Department of Defense funds to construct additional physical barriers and road or install lighting in the vicinity of the United States border." So this committee is not with this request. Now, there's some question as to whether they have the authority to deny this to deny override what they're trying to do, the Pentagon is trying to do, because it's coming from the President of the United States. And currently, the President of the United States can declare a national emergency. And it's going to be challenged in court, of course, but as of right now, he can have access to different funds. And one of the sources of those funds are from the Department of Defense. Now, again, it's going to construct, or the $1 billion is set to construct about 57 miles of southern border fencing, wall. It's actually, very ambiguous right now.
Yeah, I think that is the key right there because it's not explanatory.
Yeah.
It's not. I guess it doesn't give details as to like what kind of barrier it is.
No.
Because if it's just a fence, then like is it like the 30-foot steel or concrete or transparent wall? Is it like is it that? Is this $1 billion going towards the 57 miles? Is it going towards an actual 30-foot barrier that Trump was envisioning? If it's not, what does it look like to you, Will? What does that look like to you? Like it looks like some sort of like staged victory? Because I don't think most people disagree with like a barrier or fencing.
The Democratic Party didn't disagree with that.
Nobody ever disagreed with that.
No.
But fencing was a part of the original concession, right?
Added fencing.
That was a part of the original concession. So what I'm trying to figure out what this is.
And the Trump administration was going to be allotted certain funds, over $1 billion, just for that as well.
Yeah, to put fencing in applicable areas because there's some like areas that are not geographically fit for fencing. There was funds devoted towards border patrol. There were going to be funds devoted to fixing certain areas as well on the border fence. So that was a part of the original deal. So this is, why would you have to bypass Congress to do this when that was a part of the deal?
It would make no sense why you would have to bypass Congress because, again, like you said, Congress was going to appropriate billions of dollars to do things just like this. So both parties are not with this idea, or leaders in both parties are not with an idea like this. And they have indicated that they may restrain the Pentagon from moving around budgeted money, their own budgeted money going forward if they choose to do something like this. Because again, this is circumventing Congress just to provide funds for the United States president. So Shanahan, the Secretary of Defense, the acting Secretary of Defense, he acknowledged that was a risk. He acknowledged that was a possible circumstance that was going to arise, that going forward in the future, the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, may not be able to move around their own money. But he says that this was a demand from the President of the United States, so he intends to act on that.
And what the context of those demands are remains unknown.
This is a ridiculous situation. Again, like you said, the pertinent question here is to ask, what exactly is going to be constructed? Because according to the chairman, the House Armed Services Chairman, Adam Smith, he refers to physical barriers, road, and lighting, installing lighting, fencing.
That's vague. And it seems to be vague for a purpose. Like I said, if it was, if the intention was to build a 30-foot wall, then I believe it would be very declarative. I believe that it would be very declarative that is what's going to go on.
Right. And we have a comment saying 30-foot fences only create a demand for 31-foot ladders. If this is what is going to be constructed, yes, you would create a market for something like that. But we don't, because of the, how vague this is being, I don't think that is what is going to be constructed.
And also, we've talked about this on the show as well. Like, the higher the structure, the more, the deeper the foundation has to be. So if the structure is 30 feet high, I'm assuming that it's going to be deep down inside the ground.
Have to be, or it will topple over.
Exactly. So again, people can go under walls. You know all those tunnels that were constructed that had little tracks and railroads.
Yeah.
Like, no, whatever.
All right. Let's go to the slap one. This is one of the stories that we didn't cover last week. Matt Schlapp is a lobbyist and a chairman of the American Conservative Union, and last week appeared on Fox News with Sandra Smith to discuss the Electoral College and why it should not be eliminated. So we have a clip that we would like to show you from that interview.
You know why the popular vote's been diminished, Sandra, is because you literally have Democrats who want to have an open southern border. They don't want to have borders in our country. When people get released into the interior of our country and they're here illegally, they then want to give them a credential like a driver's license. And then in Kamala Harris's home state of California, they have changed all the voting rules so that it's very easy for people who are not on the voting rolls to vote, or people remain on the voting rolls after they are dead or after they're no longer eligible to vote. This is a scam, and I really think it's important for the American people to understand what's at play. It's not that they actually want one person, one vote. It's not that they actually want the popular vote. It's that they want to run up the tally in the popular vote, including through these means, which I think most Americans find repugnant. When you get your ballot in the mail, you should have to fill it out. You should have to turn it in. It shouldn't be given blank or in any other way to some kind of Democratic operative who can play games with that ballot. We saw that happen with a Republican in North Carolina. We're seeing it with Democrats all across the country. We will not have honest and secure elections if these laws continue.
Interesting that he quickly hurdled the issue in North Carolina in order to call out Democrats. You know, he just quickly hurdled that. He just quickly
What is the issue in North Carolina?
what was that? The 9th district?
The 9th district in North Carolina that hasn't been settled yet.
Has not been settled that. No. There was a Republican operative that was going door to door and gathering ballots, and they just magically disappeared.
Right.
A Republican operative that was said to have nothing to do, not nothing to do with the campaign, but wasn't directed by the candidate. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was the story.
Even though he was linked to
the candidate. Right. So I do think it's funny how he quickly hurdled over that in order to accuse Democrats of doing that across the country. I don't recall hearing any stories about this at all. Do you?
No, there's only one race, North Carolina's 9th district, that is unsettled right now, and it's going to go to a new election because of those shenanigans
because people picking up ballots.
Right.
Operatives picking up ballots.
Election fraud.
I do think it's interesting that he kind of just took a quick moment to mention that even though the network he's on and he's talking on completely ignored that story.
Yeah. I've said this before. One of the biggest issues that is plaguing this nation, demagoguery. Demagogues like this fool right here. He talks about how the Democratic Party doesn't really want one vote, one person. It's all a scam. This whole bid, this whole nonsense about eliminating the Electoral College, it's a scam, and it's only meant to draw more undocumented immigrants to vote. He mentions that in Kamala Harris's state of California, they provide driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants. And I don't believe that is just happening in California. That might be happening. Yeah, I believe that's happening in certain areas within the United States. Mm-hmm. They still can't vote though when it comes to federal elections, or even I don't even think they can. No, they can't even vote in state elections. In some areas, and we have talked about this before. I believe there's an area or certain places in Maryland where they can vote in local elections.
Yeah, and that's not like in every municipality.
No,
there's
it's
still
not.
Like city councils who are they have that I guess on their agenda, mm-hmm. but it hasn't really been discussed.
No. So again, in statewide elections and in federal elections, these undocumented immigrants cannot vote. But what Matt Schlapp is saying is that's where the Democratic Party is heading, to have these people illegally vote. Where is the evidence of that though? Where is the proof that there is rampant voter fraud or even significant voter fraud across this nation?
And again, if the goal is to kind of affect federal elections with these illegal voters, it wouldn't require us to get rid of the Electoral College. They would still affect the outcome.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? They would probably affect it a lot more.
And why bring up California when California historically is blue? What are more undocumented
Yo,
immigrants
it
voting
would've-
in California?
It would have made more sense for him to bring up Texas. It would have made more sense because
A red state.
because again, like Texas has a longer border
Right.
that's basically bordering Mexico. Their Mexican border is a lot longer than California.
Right.
So it would make more sense to bring up Texas and not a blue state. But see, he wasn't thinking about that though. Because it's a lie. You can't construct a lie correctly. That's the
No,
problem.
it would make no sense to increase the voter total in California.
And it really doesn't matter if dead people are still on the voting rolls. They can't vote. Like, what is he saying? People are voting in their place? Like, even if there are dead people that remain, even if that is true, even if that does happen, like, it doesn't automatically mean their vote counts because they're on the roll. That's kind of what he's suggesting. There's dead people still on the rolls, so their vote must be counting.
But yeah, you'd have to prove that voter fraud is an actual problem, but it's not. Like there are the occurrences are so minuscule. It's a nothing problem. But election fraud, now that's a problem. And he did go there. He went there as it pertains to North Carolina's 9th district. He went there, but that specific example, like you said, that relates to a Republican operative. That relates to a Republican campaign trying to get over on the process, trying to corrupt the process. But then to suggest that it's happening with Democratic campaigns, where, buddy? If it's happening, okay, let's deal with it. Because I wouldn't want that. Nobody that is interested in a democracy, fairness, protecting the vote, nobody that's interested in that would be supportive of corruption in the electoral process. So if that is happening, I would love to see the evidence, but you have to provide somewhere for us to look at. But he didn't do that. He didn't do that.
Yeah.
He didn't.
He needs to be slapped. He needs to be straight slapped.
Slap needs to be slapped.
Yeah.
All right. You just came up with it?
I've been waiting to use that.
All right. All right, let's go to Roseville. All right. I believe so, right?
Rose.
Yeah, okay. Roseville.
That's wrong.
Well, the officers.
Oh, the officer. Okay, yeah.
All right. On Friday, an officer who shot and killed a 17-year-old black teenager by firing at him, running away, was acquitted by a jury of the criminal charges he was facing. It was in June of 2018 that Officer Michael Roseville pulled over a vehicle that matched the description of a vehicle that was involved in a drive-by shooting in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 17-year-old Antwon Rose was in that vehicle, but he was not the one that was guilty of firing any shots. Officer Roseville got the driver out of the vehicle and had him on the ground. Just after that happened, two other occupants in this vehicle bolted from the vehicle, and that included Antwon Rose. The other occupant was Zywan Hester. They're both 17, and they ran away from the vehicle, straight away from the officer. The officer was on the left side of the vehicle, on the driver's side. The two teenagers got out of the passenger side of the vehicle and ran away. Roseville shot at them running away. Roseville was able to hit Antwon Rose in the back, the side of the face, and his arm. There was video of this incident, but in spite of that, it took the jury less than 4 hours to return a verdict of not guilty. Now, when we talked about this in 2018, we played the video, and at this point, it's unnecessary to do so once again. But you can clearly see from the video that Officer Roseville was on the left side of the screen. He was on the driver's side of the vehicle, and the two occupants, including Antwon Rose, they got out on the passenger side and ran away from the vehicle. So we talk about these cases constantly. We talk about these instances constantly, and we talk about police brutality, police misconduct, bad shoots. We talk about this constantly, and when we talk about that, we talk about transparency, we talk about accountability. And when we talk about accountability, we always say that there are several levels. There are several levels where accountability must be had. And at first, it starts with law enforcement. It starts with that police officer's own precinct or department. They would have to hold that officer accountable. The district attorney's office would have to hold that officer accountable. The grand jury would have to hold that officer accountable. A jury of the officer's peers would have to hold the officer accountable. And then finally, the judge would have to hold that, if it makes it that far, the judge would have to hold that officer accountable as well in terms of sentencing. Now, again, when we talk about these instances, somewhere along this path, something gets messed up. Something always gets in the way of justice and accountability. So that's exactly what happened here. This was a case where an officer did act as judge, jury, and executioner. And because he wears the badge, wears the uniform, a jury of his peers in just under 4 hours was able to pin the killing on Antwon Rose himself. Antwon Rose, 17-year-old Antwon Rose, is guilty of his own demise.
He didn't have a record either. Now, Will, typically, what's law enforcement protocol when it comes to suspects that are running away?
What's protocol?
Usually the case.
Well, you would call for backup.
Yeah.
And you would proceed to try to apprehend
Now, also
the suspect.
Also, protocol in regard to firing at a suspect that is running away. Usually, what kind of has to be present?
Imminent danger.
Imminent danger, like harm to another officer.
Right. A threat on your life.
Threat on the officer's life, or
Right.
a threat to other people's lives.
Correct.
So that would have to be the mindset of the officer at the time he shot Antwon Rose. That Antwon Rose, who he did not see had a weapon, was going to shoot someone or cause violence or harm to someone else. Because obviously in that situation, he's running away from the officer. So the officer's life is definitely not in danger.
Well, you're wrong. You're wrong. I mean, that's logical, but you're wrong. Because at the trial, Officer Rosefeld did not state that. Officer Rosefeld said that he felt like his life was in jeopardy. Like he felt there was a threat on his life. He also said that he thought a gun was pointed at him. Now think about this situation now. Now I really want you to really, if you've seen the video, if you know the details of this case, I really want you to think about this. There was a report of a vehicle that was involved in a drive-by shooting. So Officer Michael Rosefeld pulls over this vehicle. He's thinking that I'm thinking that any officer that is present in circumstances like this feels like there's an increased sense of being alert. This might be a situation where I might have to use my weapon.
And we understand that.
And we totally understand that. Now, if the suspects that were fleeing the vehicle were running towards him and he pulled the weapon and shot at them, I think, I can't see it, I can kind of try to, draw that image in my head, but I would think that that might be a justified shooting because you don't know. If they're running right at you and this vehicle was just involved in drive-by shooting, that might be a significant threat on your life. So if he shot in that circumstance, that might be justified. Very much so. That might be justified. But the problem I have here is that this officer seemed not to be able to understand if people were running towards him or away from him.
So I'm questioning his ability to observe situations objectively if he cannot tell, I guess, the threat level based on the actual situation. When somebody's like running away from you, in order for them to be a threat, as far as how he laid it out, like that Antwon was going to shoot him, he would have to be running away and pow pow going like that. That's what would have to be happening. If that was happening, I can see that being a police officer's reaction. If somebody was actually running away this way, in that direction, but they had a gun pointed behind their head or behind their waist going like this, pow, 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 just shooting at the air, then yes, that is the proper reaction. But
Actually, the proper reaction would be to duck.
well, when I say proper, I mean like, I guess looking at it as all the likely reactions.
Yeah,
all the likely reactions.
Yeah.
I would understand it. I'm not saying that would be the ideal or appropriate one, but I can see that being the case if Antwon or anyone else in that situation was doing that. And that's not what he was doing. Like, you have to be completely, I don't know, unaware of your surroundings. You're not qualified to have any job if you can't recognize that.
And see, and so what this Officer Rosefeld, is asking us and asking the jury to believe, which seems like they did, he asked that jury to believe that even though the suspects were fleeing, running away from him, it was reasonable for him to perceive a threat on his life. It was reasonable for him to pull out his gun and shoot at people running away from him. He said that this was a split, or I don't know if it's him or his attorney that said this was a split-second decision. He perceived a threat on his life, so he took action. I don't understand how this could be justifiable whatsoever. But the jury foreman, whose name is Jesse Rawls Jr., he was interviewed this weekend. He was interviewed by WHTM TV in Harrisburg, Pittsburgh. No, I'm sorry. He was interviewed by WHTM TV in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I guess he tried to explain how the jury came to a decision that they came to. And so this is a little bit of video from that interview.
You make a stop, felony stop. Someone just shot up someone else. How do you approach it? Do you approach it the way this guy approached it, which he did? Maybe he should have waited to a backup car. A backup car came. By the time the backup car came, the guys jumped out and ran. If the kids wouldn't have jumped out and ran, we wouldn't have never been in the situation. So put onus on the young men in the car. Why did they jump and run?
If those other two kids would have complied like the first young person, you and I wouldn't be talking?
We wouldn't be talking. We wouldn't be talking. If they wouldn't have jumped out of the car and ran, wouldn't be talking. But they bought it on themselves. So most young folks, you just have to obey the law. Because if you don't, some bad things can happen.
Put the onus on them. It was their fault. It's incredibly disappointing, and it's disgusting to hear words like that come from anybody.
But I know where you're going. But go ahead, man.
I'm gonna let you go there.
Okay.
But
okay.
Nobody said that it was a good idea for Antwon Rose to bolt from the vehicle, run from the vehicle. Nobody said that was a good idea. I wouldn't advise that to anybody to run from the police, because in a lot of cases it doesn't end well. So I would not support a decision like that. But that's besides the point here. I could say that what if Antwon Rose was the individual that was doing the shooting? What if he had just killed a man? It doesn't matter who Antwon Rose was at that point, because the job of a police officer is to not act. It is not to act as a judge, jury, and executioner. It's to perform the responsibilities of a police officer and apprehend the suspect, whoever that suspect is. If the suspect is fleeing you, you do not have the right to shoot them in the back to stop them. So again, nobody is arguing that Antwon Rose made the correct decision and ran from the vehicle. But what I am saying is that it should definitely be illegal for Officer Rosefeld or any police officer to shoot somebody in the back running away from them.
You know what it sounds like he's saying? It sounds like he's saying that people, when police officers encounter them, have to act perfectly. And if they do not act perfectly, then they deserve
Whatever they got.
whatever they got.
Yep.
Whatever they got. They deserve whatever they got. But
He put himself in this
But
situation.
law enforcement officers that put themselves in situations and don't act perfectly, they're given a pass, right? That's interesting to me.
We've seen officers that put their bodies
Yeah.
in the way of vehicles and then have to shoot.
Now, before the show, you kind of related this to another case.
Oh, I
with
did.
another individual who got shot in the back.
Right.
Because if this young man, he was the jury foreman, right?
Yeah.
Jury foreman
Jerry
said that
Rawls.
Antwon Rose brought this upon himself. These men brought this upon himself just for running away.
Just for running away.
How does that apply to?
Walter Scott. Walter Scott was not a young man. He was an older man. And that was in, what was that, North Charleston?
That was close to us.
Yeah, that was in South Carolina some years back. And he ran from an officer. To say he ran is a stretch.
That is a stretch. To say he jogged is a stretch.
Would be a stretch. It was like a leisurely stroll. He was
strolling while doing the motions of running.
right.
But he was moving that slow.
He wasn't getting anywhere. But the officer shot him down and killed him. Now, that officer was convicted of homicide. I believe he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. So the question I would have is, if this is the analysis from this jury foreman, Jerry Rawls Sr., if you're saying that Antwon Rose is guilty of his own demise, he's guilty of his own killing because he simply ran from the vehicle, and you're not supposed to do that when you're confronted with police officers, then I guess he would have the same opinion with Walter Scott.
And, before I go in on this dude, I want to give praise and I want to give credit and acknowledge those individuals that are baby boomers, specifically black males, that still have their head on straight about what young black males are going up against. Because unfortunately, I've seen this amongst a lot of older black men, specifically ones over 50 and 60 years old. And for the most part, when police approach them, for the most part, policemen don't see them as a threat. And I think they forget that. They see younger black males as a threat. So then they internalize how police officers treat them, and they extrapolate that out to everyone else. And they think that police officers perceive everyone else, every other black male, every young black male, the same way police officers perceive them. And that is not the case. There are some cases where a lot of older men suffer abuse at the hands of police officers. But for the most part, police officers do not see black males, specifically over 50, over 60 years old, as a threat. So typically, they get treated differently by law enforcement. So I just think that there's this disconnect that a lot of older black men have in regard to how police treat like young black males. The disconnect that exists with a lot of other people too, a lot of other groups, a lot of people who are not black. It's that same disconnect. Well, they don't treat me like that,
He must not have heard of Walter Scott. Walter Scott. He must not have
exactly, because he was like in his 40s, right? But still, but I'm just saying, for the most, he might have been older than that.
He was
but like for the
guy.
most part, they don't get treated the same way because
No.
they're perceived the same way. So it's about perception, and I think he's kind of a little detached or disconnected from that reality as it comes to people who are younger than him that have his skin color.
The point here is, though, is it is beyond nonsensical. It's offensive to put Antwon Rose's death on Antwon Rose. If Antwon Rose was effectively captured and charged with anything, well, then that would have been on him. He didn't deserve to die because he ran away. Running away is not a crime. Running away doesn't mean that there's a threat on Officer Roosevelt's life. So this death isn't on Antwon Rose, it's on Officer Roosevelt. But in less than 4 hours, like I said earlier, this jury was able to trample all over justice and protect another officer who was clearly guilty of murder. This is why we can't have justice in the United States of America. Because like I said, when you're on that path to justice, when you're on that path to accountability, there's so many different steps along that path. And to finally reach the step where a judge is going to sentence an officer to a, not a reasonable, but to a legitimate time of service. You know, like you can have to serve a significant amount for ending a life. To reach that point is rare. And it's just unfortunate, man.
While we still on this subject, I want to address a comment that I saw, and this is some old shit. This kind of talking point always makes or always surfaces when people talk about this topic, and it came from Rake Rock. I'm not sure if it came from him or he was responding to someone, but this individual in the chat decided to highlight that more whites get shot by cops. I don't understand the relevance of that, because white people, specifically white males, make up more of the population than black males. Okay. It's not about number, it's about percentage.
Proportionality.
It's proportionality. And if you look at proportionality, black males of a certain age are more likely to be shot by cops of white males of the same age. You can't look at number, you look at proportionality. I know you're smart enough to do that. I think that's like being purposefully dishonest. And more whites were in jail before the Civil Rights Act was passed. Mm-hmm. More whites were in jail during Jim Crow or during slavery. What does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Does that mean like, oh, I can't, fight for the abolition of slavery because, hey, there are more white people in jail, so they're going through stuff too. There's no problem here. That's such a stupid point, man.
All right. Let's go to Jussie Smollett, man. On Tuesday, prosecutors in Chicago, Illinois, dropped all charges against Jussie Smollett. This was a stunning development. Just a few weeks ago, prosecutors had indicted Jussie Smollett on 16 charges, felony charges. And that was concerning, I believe it was January 29th. Jussie Smollett had reported an instance where he was accosted by two individuals, and they were yelling homophobic things. They were yelling racist things at him. They were saying something like MAGA country to him, and they also put a rope around his neck. Following that report and the interview that he conducted, there were many doubts about his story. A lot of people didn't believe it. And an investigation was launched. They did have an image of two people going down the street close to where Jussie Smollett was attacked, but they didn't have any video of this instance. So again, there was a police investigation, and it turned out that the two individuals that attacked Jussie Smollett were two black individuals that knew him, his trainers. And one of them actually appeared on the show that Jussie Smollett stars in, Empire. So this all seemed to, I guess, suggest that Jussie Smollett had something to do with this, that he paid them to actually do this for some reason. At the time when it was announced that Jussie Smollett was a suspect in this case, it was Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson that said, quote, "This stunt was orchestrated by Smollett because he was dissatisfied with the salary." So from that point to the felony charges, to Smollett being indicted, to now having all charges dismissed, this wasn't a deal that was struck. This wasn't a plea agreement or anything. This was a complete dismissal of all charges on Jussie Smollett. Jussie Smollett, afterwards, he made a statement to the media. He didn't take any questions, but his attorney did. And they made it clear that this was not a deal. This was not an arrangement. This was because he was innocent.
And see, so like that is the key to all of this, because statements made by the district attorney or the assistant district attorney contradict that of Smollett's lawyers.
Right.
Now, according to the office, they say they took into account Smollett's lack of violent criminal background and the facts and circumstances of the case. And they looked at his community outreach involvement as well, and the fact that, again, he didn't have a criminal background. And they considered the bail he posted as some sort of, I forgot what they called it. They I guess they considered it restitution.
Right.
But Smollett forfeited that bail too.
He did forfeit it, which is unusual.
That's unusual.
That part is unusual because that would likely be, and historically that would be returned to you if all the charges were dismissed or dropped. But he forfeited that, and we don't know where that money is going. It might go, I guess it go to the city of Chicago. His attorney didn't seem to know where it was specifically going. But again, this was not an arrangement. This was not an agreement. This was not a plea arrangement. Nothing like that. This was just a dismissal of the charges. Again, it's a stunning development because at this point, people had already wrote off Jussie Smollett as being the one that orchestrated this whole thing. And that kind of narrative, again, was propelled by, I guess, questions about his story. But when the Chicago police superintendent, Eddie Johnson, got up on the mic and said that
definitively we have text messages that show that there was a monetary exchange. And he said this like definitively that
there was no doubt.
That there was no doubt. Turns out that those text messages were in regard to something else. Right. Now, a lot of people can say, of course you wouldn't like write a check or send text messages that blatantly say what you're doing. But as a representative of the department, you don't go on TV and blatantly say that there was correspondence between two people that definitely say that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
That's where you mess up. Obviously, like we said,
of course,
it's completely possible that that was just kind of a cover or smokescreen. But you don't go on television and say that we have definitive proof of that. And also, you don't go on television and say you have like suspicion that he sent the letter to himself,
right.
Which as of right now, the FBI says that may not be the case, that he sent it to himself after an investigation. That's still up in the air. So there's a lot of stuff that's up in the air right now, including the consequences or the results of the charges being dropped, where the prosecutors' stories doesn't line up with Smollett's lawyers. What's going on here? Like, what the heck is going on here? Now, I've heard some conspiracy theories and shit. Now, this is true, but I don't know how much validity it has or how much it had on this case. But apparently, George Soros donated money to the campaign of the state's attorney, Kim Foxx. But she's not the one who prosecuted the case, though. You know what I'm saying? I've heard that conspiracy. I don't know how it ties into this verdict or not. I really don't know.
Of course that would be a theory.
Of course that would be the case.
Look, again, this is a stunning development. I was listening to Fox News, actually.
Oh, gosh.
Judge Napolitano, though.
Okay. All right.
Because this is a legal matter.
Okay.
Right? You can listen to him when it comes to legal matters. So his opinion was that either the prosecutors overreached or there was some real fancy, smooth lawyering by Jussie Smollett's legal team. Now, I don't think the latter could be true because it just doesn't seem that you could go from a police investigation where the Chicago police superintendent is right in front of a microphone indicting, in the case of public opinion, he's indicting Jussie Smollett.
How many charges? Like 16 or 17 charges?
But before, I'm talking about before that even happened. So the Chicago police superintendent was indicting them in front of the cameras. Now, that case gets onto the desk of the district attorney's office. The district attorney would have to go through it and have to see the same thing that the police were seeing because they indicted Jussie Smollett on 16 counts. How do you go from that to dropping all charges? Something is funny here. Something doesn't add up. And another thing, if we're saying that Jussie Smollett is innocent, because we don't know at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a crazy story.
That far.
Yeah, this is a crazy story. I have no idea. But if we are saying that Jussie Smollett is innocent, and maybe the Chicago police were duped or they overreached, they didn't get the information that they were gathering actually pointing in another direction or whatever. All I'm saying is, if Jussie Smollett is innocent, somebody else would probably have to be charged here. You know what I'm saying? Somebody is guilty of something.
Now this is kind of a coincidence that, because what did this abduction surround, or what figures? What kind of figures?
Yeah, these right-wing MAGA.
Yeah, supposedly it said MAGA.
Yeah.
I don't think he said in the interview that they were wearing hats or anything.
He said they were wearing masks.
They weren't wearing masks, or they weren't wearing hats or anything.
No,
he just
I
said they
believe
screamed out like MAGA. Right.
MAGA country.
MAGA country.
Right.
Isn't it a coincidence that the assistant district attorney that was prosecuting the case, his name was Maggots. M-A-G-A-T-S. Boy, that's the coincidence right there. Now, but according to him, he says this doesn't exonerate Smollett, though. I think that's funny, considering that, there's somebody else who was considered not necessarily not guilty, or was considered, whatever, and not exonerated in the same way.
Yeah.
That's Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's true. But look, to say that this doesn't exonerate him, again, it just leads me to this question. How do you go from indicting him on 16 charges to now saying that all charges are dropped? Not even one remains. But he's not exonerated.
If people on the right wing are going to, I guess, behave or respond or react in the same way with the same standards, that means he's vindicated, right? Yeah. Because Donald Trump is vindicated. Even though he's not exonerated, he's vindicated. So Jussie Smollett is not necessarily exonerated, but shouldn't they see it the same way? I was just loving the reactions I saw on right-wing Twitter. They were so outraged about this.
Outraged. They wouldn't even do it justice.
They were so outraged about charges being dropped against someone. I was just like, man, I wish they would keep the same energy when a police officer walks free when they murder somebody.
Yep, but they don't.
They don't.
One of those right-wing individuals that you're talking about is
our favorite,
Candace Owens. I promise you, I never can remember her name. I always want to say Candace Parker, and that's such
a disrespect.
It's such disrespect to Candace Parker, the talented Candace Parker. It's such a disrespect.
And she's fine. Candace Parker's actually fine.
But yeah, Candace
and
Owens.
Play ball.
She can play ball. Candace Owens, right wing, just clownish voice, Blexit, all that nonsense. She said on Twitter, "Imagine if a white male actor faked the hate crime against himself by pretending black men attacked him in the middle of the night, then was subsequently acquitted of all charges. Jussie Smollett is an utter perversion of justice who just destroyed the myth of white privilege."
Okay, let's take this in steps.
Let's
take this in steps and look at what Jussie Smollett actually said. As far as his testimony and when it came to this incident. Now, I saw the interview. I'm not sure fully because I only saw the interview one time, so I could be mistaken.
I went back and I saw it again.
You went back.
I went back.
Did Smollett say anything about white people?
That was not a word he used. He said that, I believe he gave a physical description of the assailants.
They're wearing masks.
They were wearing masks.
I don't think he said they were wearing MAGA hats, but it still wouldn't matter anyway because that's not an indication of whiteness. But I don't think he mentioned skin color at all.
He did not.
So, kind of, what is being revealed here? What are they revealing? Like, by accident.
Yes.
What are they revealing by accident by making that jump or somehow reading into that subcontext? What they are kind of suggesting is there's an association between MAGA hats, Trump supporters, and white people.
Oh, yes. We didn't do it for
We
them.
didn't do it.
Candace Owens made that jump all by herself.
It's associated with whiteness.
Yes.
That's what she did. That's what she did without even knowing it. Now, why would that be? Why would that be? Why would you associate the two unless a particular candidate went out of his way to appeal to whiteness?
And then towards the end, I'm going to jump right towards the end when she starts talking about white privilege. So Jussie Smollett, all by himself.
All by himself.
All by his lonesome. He destroyed the myth of white privilege. Now, okay.
You're gonna give us an analogy, William. Give us an analogy, please.
So,
I know you have one in your back pocket.
a white person was arrested somewhere in the United States of America today. I can assure you that a white person was arrested in the United States of America Tuesday, March 26, 2019.
Maybe more than one.
You know what? But I'm gonna be on the low end. I'm gonna say one. Right. Okay. So if one white person was arrested, destroys the myth of white privilege, because that would mean that white people get arrested too. Oh snap! Damn. White people so white people run into problems with the law too.
Damn, dog.
Snap, man.
Yo, man, I didn't know that, man. That totally changes everything.
White privilege doesn't exist. Thank you for informing me, Candace.
But I do love how somehow they can discover the subcontext behind a red hat, right?
Yeah.
And like who that's associated with, particularly white people, but somehow can't find the subtext when people bring up Islamophobia being used as kind of a proxy to talk down to brown people, or the term thug being used as a placeholder for nigger.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? It's interesting how subtext does not exist at all anywhere else when it comes to replacement language or language people use as a replacement for derogatory terms. But here, MAGA country,
Just MAGA in general.
MAGA in general, general means white.
You know, Candace Owens.
That's the joke right there. That was the punchline. That's it. That's all you gotta say.
But you know what? I'm sure that no matter who you are, no matter what you believe in, I'm sure that anybody believes that people that have money and influence, they have a certain type of privilege because of that stature, right? Lori Loughlin and Becky.
Aunt Becky.
She was just recently
You're
arrested.
in big trouble, mister. Sorry, I had to bring out Michelle on that one.
She was just recently arrested because of this whole scam concerning her daughters getting into USC. A huge scam that involved multiple people, but it involved several celebrity type names, and Lori Loughlin is one of them. So that Lori Loughlin was arrested, and she is being held to account for her crimes. I guess that would suggest that celebrity
privilege or class privilege doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist whatsoever.
Because like a group of rich people
yes,
was held accountable in this particular instance, that means class privilege doesn't exist.
wipe it away because
Wipe
it doesn't
it away
exist.
completely.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
We have this one little example, and that means that privilege does not exist anymore. And again, we don't even know that Jussie Smollett is guilty. Now you can say that it looks like he is. I can say that it looks like he is too, because all of this stuff is just not adding up. But it doesn't matter when you're talking about Candace Owens' point. It doesn't matter. Because white privilege still exists, celebrity privilege still exists. I heard about pretty privilege, that exists. There's many privileges that exist. Candace Owens, man. That might have been the first time we actually talked about her on the show, too.
Nah.
You
I
think?
think that she's so forgettable and her points are so
Maybe.
nonsensical, it's easy to forget that
You
we
might
talk
be
about
right.
her.
You
Because
might.
she's so ridiculous.
You might be right.
But I'm liking it, man. I'm loving the reaction, man. I'm loving the outrage because it just seems that like right-wingers are more outraged about charges being dropped against Jesse Smollett than when 50 Muslims were massacred in the church. I see more outrage from them.
Yep. All right. We're gonna open this stream up for calls now. We want to hear from you. And so now is the time to get that done and start that portion of the show. The number to call into LTMB is 669-900-6833. We would like to hear some new voices. We would like to hear some loyal voices, people that have called in many times. All of you, if you have a question or comment, please feel free to call in. This isn't a story while we're waiting on that first caller. This isn't a story. I did just want to acknowledge this, though. Tuesday, March 26, 2019. Today marks the beginning of bump stocks being illegal in the United States of America. It is now illegal to own or sell a bump stock in the United States.
I have two words to describe this situation. Freedom gone. Nope, 3. Freedom gone completely.
Freedom is gone.
Totally.
Those are 3 words too. Freedom is gone.
Yep. That's it. Freedom is gone.
Man. So if you are caught with one, there is a penalty. And that penalty could be all the way up to 10 years in prison.
Freedom's just being stripped away from us.
Stripped away. Can't even possess what is rightfully yours, a bump stock that was provided to you in the Constitution.
Look, man, people have the freedom to attach a device to their gun that allows them to inaccurately shoot at targets, okay?
Yes.
Allows them, no. Freedom to shoot inaccurate guns or shots is in the Constitution. That's I have
verbatim.
Verbatim. I should have the freedom to do that. To use a device that allows me to shoot inaccurately.
Shall not be infringed upon.
Shall not be infringed upon. I'm just interested. I'm looking forward to the enforcement.
I am as well.
I'm looking to it.
Because, people were given 90 days to either turn them into the ATF or destroy them themselves.
They're not destroying them. I'm not even sure they're turned. I'm telling you, there's a lot of people who are going to hoard them. Because essentially they're valuable now. Because now it's a black market for them. They're illegal. So they're more valuable. So you're going to see the internet, the low key, the black internet, what's that called? The dark web
the
or
dark
whatever.
Web, yeah.
Apparently, is that back up now? Because remember it got shut down?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, this was going to go on the dark web.
But, yeah, like you said, freedom is gone. Sad story in the United States, man. Sad story. Freedom gone here. Freedom's gone in New Zealand.
Oh,
freedom
damn.
going everywhere. Damn.
It's been gone in Australia.
Yeah. Oh, damn.
That been gone.
Been gone, man. You can't live as a free individual in Australia. Ain't that some
How
shit?
is Australia still even around?
It didn't turn into a dictatorship
How is it still a thing?
Yeah, you're right.
They're not slaves?
Yeah.
They're not
A slave state.
There's not
yeah.
a slave state?
A slave continent. Damn.
No. They would have to be. So whatever we've been hearing about Australia has been propaganda. It's not true. So they're probably in like the equivalent of FEMA camps.
So you're saying the news that we get is actually fake news?
Probably, yeah.
So we don't really know what the real is there.
It could be like a dictatorial
shit.
type situation.
We're about to go through that whole same thing now. We're about to go through that whole thing.
Just because of bump stocks?
Just because of bump stocks.
Just because of bump stocks.
Damn it. Slippery slope, man. Slippery slope.
Oh, boy. Man, we want some callers, man. We want
saying.
some people to call in and push back on some things. I'm dead serious, man.
You want some pushback?
Yeah, man, because, to be honest, man, that's kind of what I've been pushing back against. Like, I guess because of the political circle we kind of navigate through,
Right.
I don't really come across right-wing mugs. I gotta go. I mean, I see them, but technically, I just come across their stuff because I'm looking for it.
Right.
But for the most part, I associate with people on the left, and unfortunately, man, I'm just not impressed, dog, man. Obviously, ideologically, I match up with people on the left, but they're human too, so they kind of become susceptible to the same kind of flaws. You know what I'm saying? You know, not reading enough, taking a position without, you know, not letting any other information in. I see it happening, man. I see people taking, I don't know, just like fallacious positions on things, man. You know what I'm saying? It happens on the left all the time, man.
You
It
know,
happens on the left, bro.
look, we don't have any callers right now. This just caught my eye just now. Biden news. The nerve. The nerve. Joe Biden, former vice president of the United States under President Barack Obama, and who was looked at as a potential candidate for 2020, the Democratic primaries. Joe Biden, who used to be a senator. I have to point that out too. Used to be a senator. It appears as though he's doing some reflection. He's doing some reflection right now.
Some very timely reflection.
You know, let me see if I can get a quote. I would love to get. Here we go. So I guess he started talking about Anita Hill. For those of you who do not know who Anita Hill is, which I'm sure you probably do, but Anita Hill was the individual, the woman who accused Clarence Thomas of sexual harassment back in the 90s. And there was a hearing. There was a very famous hearing now that you can go back and look at. But Biden was present for that hearing.
Oh, yes. So, like...
Biden was...
So, which is...
criticized for his actions during that hearing.
So you were saying he was on the other side of Anita Hill.
Yeah, it seems so.
So he was on the side of like David Brock,
Yeah.
who like wrote a book smearing her, smearing her character.
Right. So now he's doing a little reflection.
And he did some kind of subterfuge in regard to the hearings. He tried to get Anita Hill to give over all the information before the hearing. Is that correct?
Yeah, he did.
So your boy could review it.
Yep.
What's his name?
Clarence
Thomas. So Clarence Thomas and his attorneys could review it. So, yeah.
He's doing some reflection. So this is a quote from Biden, who was the chairman of that Senate Judiciary Committee. He said, quote, "Our brave lawyer, a really notable woman, Anita Hill, a professor, showed the courage of a lifetime talking about her experience being harassed by Clarence Thomas." Oh, you're saying it like it actually happened. He continues, "But she paid a terrible price. She was abused in the hearing. She was taken advantage of. Her reputation was attacked. I wish I could have done something."
Oh, wait. Okay.
Oh my.
What?
There's more.
Oh, man.
There's more. I think this is the last. Yeah. This is yeah. Quote, "There were a bunch of white guys hearing this testimony in the Senate Judiciary Committee. So when Anita Hill came to testify, she faced a committee that didn't fully understand what the hell it was all about. And to this day, I regret I couldn't come up with a way to get her the kind of hearing she deserved, given the courage she showed by reaching out to us."
Yo, it seems like he's talking about a situation that he was not a part of. Doesn't it sound like that to you? Like he was not there.
He had
A bunch
no
of
autonomy.
white guys.
He had no autonomy.
He had no. He was just a fly on the wall. That's what it sounds like.
Nope.
He makes it sound like he wasn't there. Again, if you are trying to offer your condolences to her situation and put yourself out in front by doing that, you need to mention and highlight the part you played in that. I didn't hear any "I did this,"
Hands clean.
"I'm sorry,"
Nope.
I played a part in this process or in that process that happened. He didn't say any of that. So this comes off very empty to me and he's disassociating himself from the entire situation.
This seems like somebody that is about to get into the whole fray of running for president.
Oh no, that sounds just like that. Why would you do that?
Why would you?
Not only do that, you pick a black woman specifically, a situation that involved a black woman, and now you're trying to come clean. That leads me to believe that the rumors we were hearing about Stacey Abrams being a running mate from the gates, out the gate
Yeah,
with Biden might be true.
that might be a reality.
Or maybe they're just testing. They're just kind of throwing things out there to see how, perception changes. They're going to watch polls because they probably were watching the polls after that kind of rumor surfaced about him coming out the starting blocks with Stacey Abrams. They probably poll watched to see where it moved. The polls probably didn't move. I don't think they moved that much. So guess what? They got to employ something else. Now they're going to poll watch after this little empty apology.
This is disgusting. All right, this is straight up disgusting. So I'm really interested in where the polls will go after this, because anybody that believes that this apology or what, actually it's not even an apology because
my bad.
He's washing his hands clean of it.
Like,
so it's just hey, I wish I could have done more. All those bad white guys, they were really attacking her. I wish I could have done something more. Okay, all right, Joe.
Okay, Joe.
All right, so we're gonna begin this. We have a few people waiting. So we're going to start with the 267 area code. Caller, you are on the air live with LTMB. Yes, we can hear you. Hold up.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Am I too loud?
No, you good.
No, you're good. Who do we have on the phone?
Oh, good. Oh, this is Phil from Philly again.
Oh,
Phil,
man.
nice to hear from you, man.
Hey, what's good? I just had a couple. I didn't catch the stream from the very beginning, but I did want to comment on something y'all just touched on when y'all were talking about. I didn't catch if y'all said y'all were like progressive or like what y'all like would technically label yourselves. I'm assuming y'all sound pretty progressive, obviously, but I want to say that in my personal experience, and like when I was an undergrad, I was a poli-sci major. So like, even since, a young guy, I've like been in like debates and all that and arguments online and in person. But I would have to say the misconception, and don't get me wrong, it's true. The American right wing is generally the dumbest block of people I've encountered. Like, it's like literally like Rand Paul and libertarians are like the shining geniuses of the wing of your, group of people. Like, but a lot of people on the left, literally, they're just opposite sides of the same coin. Cause I think like last time we spoke, you guys mentioned, progressives are like a minority in the country. Like certain issues are popular, obviously, like Medicare for all and legalizing marijuana. But like there are a lot of like these center left people and centrists and like even like people who are like Democrats, but they're really conservative. And I kind of had a question for y'all in relation to y'all. I was curious, do y'all think that y'all are on any particular issue? Are y'all moderate or conservative? Because like me, like even though I am progressive, I'm sure there's like a particular issue like I would be moderate on, like maybe like immigration or something, like or like something I couldn't think of. Like I consider myself like I guess like a social democrat if I had to like kind of narrow it down to like one of those terms. Like I'm not far left, like I'm not like a communist or a socialist or anything, but I was curious if you guys, if there was any like particular issue that y'all weren't necessarily quote unquote progressive on, or maybe that even you were like far left on, like further than like a quote unquote progressive. Like maybe if you were like, cause like I do, like the funny thing is the far left, which like people like actual democratic socialists and stuff like that I followed, a lot of them are actually pretty intelligent. It's these actual centrists that are like identity politics people on college campuses and all that are like SJWs. A lot of them aren't even, and don't get me wrong, some of them are like communist too, but a lot of them are really just like, fairly into politics, but not really like kind of surface level. Like a lot of their arguments, and I say this because I'm not in an area where I know that many or conservative people. So like other than online, like I personally don't even know many like Trump supporters, like personally. I like online I do, like, or social media, like I debate people that I vaguely know or like had mutual friends, but I had no choice but to debate centrists and like moderate Democrats or whatever, like because that's all that's around me besides like my progressive friends. So I agree with y'all when y'all mentioned that like the left, like not every, like even like so-called progressive, like even I'll give you on the reparations topic, and I'll let y'all answer my question about if y'all are conservative or anything. But just to touch a little bit on the reparations topic, I've argued for this, and I'm for reparations, but like I'm not. It's I'm still a Bernie supporter. I'm not really like I have a really long like explanation on my view on that. But I believe off principle though, because I'm generally for it, I do out of principle, if I'm in a debate or conversation, I will argue for it. And like for one instance, like one idea I have, like if you have specific universities that were built on slavery, they could work out their own, deal for their reparations. I know like Caribbean people got reparations from some university in London or something like that for like I guess like a case. So I think in America that could be part of the like over like because I feel like reparations really it would be like a Green New Deal, like like for like certain communities like Black Wall Street specific, because like when you look into it, there are a lot of popularized examples of it. Like everybody talks about Black Wall Street, but it's a lot of more examples of that I didn't even know of. But anyway, I will say
let's get to your question.
Progressives show their true colors on the reparations, so I will say that. But I'll let y'all answer the conservative question or whatever y'all want.
I was wondering whether your question was inspired by my comments about the left, and you kind of clarified that. I don't necessarily like the idea of like defining people. I'm a progressive, I'm a liberal. I think those terms make it easier to designate who we're talking about, but it doesn't really boil down to like, I guess, addressing how sensible an issue is or how sensible a topic is. Like on the surface, I guess we would call ourselves progressive, but if there was another term that kind of was applicable to our worldview, we would call ourselves that. So like pretty much we just, I guess are for social change that promotes the common good. And I think at its base, social change that I guess mitigates human suffering. Social change that kind of gives opportunities in the relevant spaces. Social change that seeks to overturn kind of this current system that we have now. So like how people see those issues matters more, whether anybody sees this issue as a sensible topic, and how we correct those issues should be, I guess, how we define ourselves. So it doesn't matter what someone labels themselves as. We should more look at like whether they're making sound arguments in regard to a topic. So maybe that's how we should separate ourselves and not just say, oh, I'm a progressive, I'm a Democrat, or I'm a liberal. I mean, because once you put yourself in that position, you kind of put yourself in a position where it's like you don't necessarily feel the need to make a sound argument. That's how we should be separated. I don't know how Will sees it.
I mean, just to get at the heart of your question about, if we would, I guess, ascribe ourselves to conservatism or maybe a more moderate position, this 2019 Republican Party, what is deemed to be conservative in 2019, I'm not with that at all. There's not anything. There's not anything about that. And I don't even think it's an ideology at this point, unless the ideology is I don't care about humanity. I don't care about like regular people or the majority of people, because that's what it seems to be. What conservatism.
I see what you're doing. So you're looking past this label and looking at like how it performs. You're looking at what they promote, and instead of just saying that's conservative, you're going past that label and saying you're characterizing it, you're describing it, you're defining it.
Yeah. So whatever that is in 2019, that's not what I'm with. But like you said, labels are I mean, we can be progressives today, and 2 years from now will be another term. You know, it really doesn't matter. It's just what we kind of refer to ourselves as, and it's basically because of what other people refer to us as too. But yeah, like you said, we are for promoting social change. We're for the betterment of society. We want to see the people that are historically disenfranchised put in better situations so they can have better outcomes. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, we're not like utopianist. That's definitely not the case. We're on planet Earth. There's no way like the planet Earth can be a utopia. Right. So like we're definitely not utopianists. We just kind of want to promote a situation that's like more ideal for everybody. Yeah. But we appreciate your question, Phil. Yeah, but we have about 3 more callers in line after you, and we're going to get to them. But man, we appreciate you kind of putting that question forth.
Man, thank you for calling in again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no problem, man. Y'all take it easy.
All right, man.
Thanks.
All right, so we're going to go to 415 area code. You are on the air live with LTMB. Who is this and where are you calling from? 415 area code. You are on the air live with LTMB. Who is this and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Corey from Oakland, California.
Corey?
You said Corey from Oakland.
Wait, hold on. Do us a favor and you got to mute that audio because it's coming back. It's coming back on the stream.
Yeah, feedback.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What do you say your name was again?
Corey from Oakland, California.
All right. What's going on, Corey? What you got for us tonight?
I just want to add some input onto the gun control topic that you guys were talking about earlier.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, since people are talking about like assault weapons increase the amount of casualties happening in gun violence.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through all the records of history of statistics that they have on deaths and injuries. And definitely it seems like AR-15s alone as a category assault weapon.
Yes, sir.
Increase death toll in shootings by about 6 times.
Damn.
And that shows up in the way that in the last 3 years we've had 8 AR-15 shootings that have had casualties that have equaled out to the amount of 47 other shootings.
Wow.
And that's just AR-15s. That's just not assault weapons alone.
Wow.
That's just in the last 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to find that because, I mean, I like guns. They're kind of cool. And a lot of people do.
Right.
But assault weapons in particular seem to cause an extraordinary amount of damage. And they are not used for defense. They're used for offense.
Right. They are not practical.
And I just wanted to...
they're not practical.
They're
like
not
you said,
practical,
they're not used for defense. Like you can't put it in a different way. They're used for offense. They're used to kill as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time possible. I mean, like anybody reasonable in this country, the reasonable starting position is never let's ban all guns. No, nobody says that.
No.
Nobody is on that side of the argument. But they put us there. Though.
I'm not even on that side.
No, nobody's there. But me personally, I'm not a fan of guns. Though.
Yeah,
but even I'm not advocating for just banning every single.
Even AR-15s. Like me, like I may be against like regular folk having it, but like at least we can start the conversation like Will is talking about. I knew I have an inclination to where you were going. That's background checks.
Right.
That's the least
simplest thing that we can do.
That's the least we can do.
Right.
And I think the conversation does go beyond just the availability of guns and us having guns. It's kind of the mentality that we have in regard to guns. I think that plays a part in it too. I'm just going to take the Marion Williamson approach and talk about it in regard to like our perception of guns as Americans and people's perception of guns as Americans and like how that's perceived and how we relate to guns. It's not just a form of recreation. If it was just seen as a
Yeah.
form of recreation, then we wouldn't have a problem. But it's not. It's always connected to strength.
Yeah.
It's always connected towards, domination. I think how we perceive guns does
Absolutely.
definitely determine how we use guns. So we do have to start the conversation about like what legislation is reasonable in regard to background checks, but we also have to have the conversation about like how Americans perceive guns.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Nobody
Like,
wants to ban all guns. We just want to act like a responsible nation that actually is ensuring the livelihoods, implement some safeguards for its own people. That's what we want to get done in the United States. If we can't even have universal background checks, we don't care. We don't care about the people of this country at all. You can't say that you care about the inhabitants of this country if you're not ensuring protections and setting up a situation where when somebody's buying a firearm. If you don't know, then you don't know who's buying that firearm and what they're gonna, if they have a mindset where they want to do some damage to people because they've done damage to people before, but you don't know that because universal background checks are not a thing in this country. It just makes no sense. But like you said, to your point about the the assault weapons, AR-15s, whatever, they have no practical use.
They are weapons of domination,
right.
strictly.
There are many weapons, handguns. I mean, there's many shotguns. There are many weapons that are suitable for protecting you and your family. You don't need an assault rifle. You just don't need one.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
like I look at it like this. It's just like any other product or owning any other object. Like everyone is not certified and qualified to drive a 18-wheeler. But most of the people who are not qualified or certified to drive an 18-wheeler are certified and qualified and have license to drive regular cars. Why? Because they've proven they're equipped to do that. And in order to have the privilege of driving an 18-wheeler, you have to go through what? Training. I don't understand why it should be different for guns. Like I said, I'm not necessarily at this point for banning guns because we haven't even really gone fully frontal and kind of fully live with any kind of background checks. But why not make it like that? Like, why not make it to where it's like, hey, you want to own this weapon? You have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you can use it, and you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you actually need it. And
Well,
you're in a situation where you know what I'm saying?
You're talking
I
about
just wanna
implementing
add-
some type of regulations. Like,
Regulation,
hey,
yeah.
you're gonna have to, like you said,
and I just
dexterity
wanna add-
and all of that.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
I just want to add two other points. Like one, they're not looking at statistics of like gangland shootings and how much more impact assault weapons have in those. And they're also not looking at the realities that Mexico has firearms illegal, but the gangs from Mexico come up to the United States and go to sporting goods stores here and purchase weapons and come down there and commit far more massive atrocities even down there than we have up here in the United States.
Man, that's some knowledge that a lot of people are not talking about, no doubt. I'm glad you did that research, man. I'm glad you called in to discuss it with us.
All right. All right, guys, I gotta go.
All right, Corey.
man. Have a good night, bro.
You too. Sure.
All right, so we're going to go to 770 area code. You are on the air live with LTMB.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, it's Tony.
What's going on, Tony?
Tony, what's up, Tony?
Good to hear from you tonight.
AT Alien.
Yeah, I missed like the whole show, but I'm just calling in to talk about the that whole Mueller report.
Okay.
Okay.
I wonder if
He already left.
He already laughing.
because I know a lot of people got their feelings hurt after that whole Russia thing for goddamn 2 years. And everybody, including myself, was like, "Well, there's no evidence of that."
Mm-hmm.
No, he's his Manchurian candidate. He's the puppet. Well, any evidence of that? I just know it is because Rachel Maddow says it every fucking night.
Rachel Maddow, yeah.
Yeah.
If you talk about Rachel Maddow, she is one that continuously harped on it, and even after the summary report by Barr, I think she had like 15 questions about it, like pressing questions about why she still suspects that something happened or something like that. It was never really we said this at the beginning. It was never really a focus of us.
We never covered it.
Russia or anything.
We never
like
covered
that.
Russia
because we never bought into the idea that Hillary Clinton was affected by Russian collusion and that's why she lost the election. That was never it. Now the whole possibility that Donald Trump did something with Russians, reached out or anything like that, I never said one way or another that it happened, that it didn't happen, because there's no way for me to know that.
Financial connections, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Like my.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
My thing is, I think it's important, kind of for people not to engage in false narratives, whether they bought into it or whether they didn't buy into it. Because what I see is like, when it comes to an issue, you have two groups. It's not just two groups, but two main groups. And so you have group A who will just, I don't know, believe whatever media, I guess the media source that they choose, the media source of their liking. They'll just believe what that media source is telling them, whatever that media source is. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. In regard to an issue, they'll just believe it. Then you will have group B who will kind of disengage from an issue simply because the corporate media on either side is covering it incorrectly. Both groups are wrong because one group is being spoon-fed by the media and the other group doesn't want to look at it, the issue, as a standalone issue by themselves independently, simply because the mainstream media or the corporate media is covering it incorrectly. That's not really a good position to have. And what that does is result in false narratives coming forth from either side, whether you just believe in it or whether you don't. It's really not necessary to create false narratives. And to kind of, I guess, to add on what I said earlier, I see it happen on both sides. Like there's false narratives that are attached to this story, and I just see it widespread.
Like what? But what's the false narrative on the side that doesn't?
Oh, I talked about that earlier. Like I said, the left, progressives, like.
Okay, I missed it.
I was like, I already know the false narrative on the right. I don't think that's even like I don't think it's necessary to explain that. But like I get it. Like Bernie Sanders lost. DNC is whack. DNC, technically they cheated, but there's some legal debate to whether they really did or not. So definitely, I'm mad about that. I'm mad about what they did to Bernie Sanders. Who isn't? And most people have a chip on their shoulder, so they lost. And so we need to have a way to explain that to ourselves. And unfortunately, we do that in isolation. And we do that kind of as a coping mechanism, and we kind of come up with a framing on our own without looking at anything that's happening outside of that. So what we do is we incorrectly put two things together that may not go together. Yes, the DNC lost, or the Democrats lost, Hillary Clinton lost, and then all of a sudden this whole kind of Russia thing comes along. So what people have done is automatically tied the two together. And people on the left have done that. So they bought into a right-wing narrative. Oh, they lost. So they came up with the Russia thing as some sort of retaliation for Trump winning, when I actually don't think that's true, considering what Russiagate is actually about, and that's hacking and troll farms. And that's actually something that did not originate from the DNC, and it did not originate from the Democratic Party. That originated from intelligence. This same intelligence is actually continuously, as of last year, 2 years ago, being pushed by Trump's own Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. He was CIA at the time. He actually is pushing that. I urge people to go to C-SPAN and look up an event that he was a part of. Forgot what it was called. I told people at the beginning of the show, but it was like something democracies. It was a Security Council event about democracies and security and all that. Oh. And he mentioned.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead. No,
yeah,
go ahead.
I think I vaguely remember that, like to the point of where, what you're telling me, I remember it.
He highlighted.
But the thing is that there's no substantiated evidence that is what swung the election. Especially when you start looking at numbers.
No doubt.
When you start talking about experts in advertising and marketing, and you ask them, did memes on Facebook swing the election? They're like, what? It's hard enough to sell like a product on there. How the hell are you going to swing a fucking election?
Oh, no. We don't believe that's true. It's just like, it just needs to be clarified that like where the Russiagate like narrative actually like comes from. And in that event, Mike Pompeo, again, lifelong Republican, no association with the DNC, he actually referenced back to Nixon, talking about how the Russians have been trying to hack and engage in cyber warfare, and he mentioned other countries too. So again, it's like it puts that narrative in question. Well, that's something that the Democrats and the DNC came out with, but that's not true. It's not true. And if that was true, how come Trump's own State Department has kind of continued that narrative? If that was just some sort of narrative that the Democrats and DNC constructed, then guess what? The people, the individuals that Trump put in positions at the State Department agencies didn't have to carry on with that narrative. You see what I'm saying? So it's everybody. That's all I'm saying. It's all of them. They're all playing a part in this, and that's important to mention. They're all playing a part in it.
Yeah. Okay, I'll give you that. But I do remember him pushing that CIA, especially another organization that played a big part in it, because they very recently had an article in New York Times. That's the NSA. NSA comes out talking about some crazy shit. Oh Russia, blah blah blah. Get the fuck out of here. Yeah, we're gonna trust. All of a sudden, we're gonna trust the alphabet agencies because they never do any wrong. They never lead us into a war that costs millions of lives. They never ever do that.
And does
every decade they do it.
And then like when a Democrat comes into office, does the NSA, CIA, and FBI all become Democrat? Or when a Republican comes into office, does the entire FBI, CIA, or NSA or any other intelligence agency automatically become that one party? So it just like it really doesn't make any sense. But yeah, man. Did you have anything else to add or something else you want to talk about before we move on to the next caller?
No, that's it, man. That's it. I just wanted to, because like I said, I missed the whole show, but I just wanted to call in and mention it.
All
right, Tony. It's good to hear from you tonight.
All right, man.
All
right, we got about 10 more minutes. We're going to go to our next caller, 860 area code. You are on the air live.
How you doing? Hi, this is Gabriel, 3G Base.
Gabriel. Okay, I'm just going to call you Gabriel.
You can call me whatever the hell you want except conservative.
All right,
man.
That shit ain't gonna fly.
Where you calling from, Gabriel? Where you calling from?
I'm calling from Connecticut, and I'll apologize because I may go into a couple of different voices. For some odd reason, I tend to pick up accents. I can't help it. And I'll tell you what, it isn't disrespectful. It's meant to be funny.
All right.
But
well, what you got?
What I was calling in for, I got turned on to this lovely little call-in show that you're running, and believe me, I'm going to push the hell out of this because you guys are awesome. I got turned on by a friend of mine, Sharon, in your chat, and one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was, when are we going to stop dancing around the elephant in the room that keeps pushing us in directions that most of the people don't want to go? I mean, honestly, why the hell are we in Syria? What's going on with the Golan Heights? Why do the Palestinians need to die? That's my question.
Oh, those are uncomfortable issues.
Those are uncomfortable issues.
Those are uncomfortable issues.
I don't care if they're uncomfortable or not. They're true.
Yeah.
How can they not be?
But there's of course, those are uncomfortable issues. There are many more uncomfortable issues. Flint, Michigan is still a thing.
I'm just scratching it.
Oh, yeah,
I'm just scratching it, and I haven't even begun to itch.
Yeah, I understand. It's just that when you're talking about the media in this country, there's a lot of issues that go unrecognized, or if they are recognized, they're only recognized for a moment, and a lot of information isn't drawn, or a lot of attention isn't drawn to it. So
not to mention that the national attention span is shorter than Trump's mushroom. But let's go on.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, the reason why, again, to piggyback off of Will, these issues are hardly ever broached, honestly, is because of the people of the United States do not, I guess, want to come to grips with the facts that we are a part of a country that is causing a lot of harm across the globe. Yeah. Who wants to believe that their country is not like what it was all cracked up to be? Nobody wants to believe that. It's easier for us because we kind of like compartmentalize that. It's simply because we live here. That doesn't necessarily mean we have to accept everything this country does.
See, patriotism is also, often confused for nationalism. And a lot of people don't really want to confront
that's the
the hard
problem,
truth
because when you start getting into nationalism, you start getting into nationalism along the lines of Nazism. You can't do that. That's exactly what Israel has done. They took their captors and the people that tried to murder them to the very last person and took all of their ideals and forced them on the rest of the Middle East. Why?
That's interesting that you put it like that. Because when you're talking
and I'm
about
half Jewish, that's what sucks. I'm half Jewish.
I like the way you put that, because you say force their ideals. That's exactly kind of how it's presented when we're talking about the United States, because we are supposed to be spreading something, and that something is freedom and democracy. And
we're spreading something, and it has nothing that don't even rhyme with democracy. Man.
Exactly, and I think that's the problem too. I think that's the problem. Another problem that comes up with labels, kind of what we were talking about earlier. So we can call it freedom and democracy all we want to, but if we're not describing what is going on in regard to that, that's all people see is freedom and democracy. Because I think that's the purpose of using those terms as propaganda, because that's all people see, even though they don't actually see how it's playing out. If you characterize it and describe it and define it based on what we actually do, then that'll be different. But see, we describe it as freedom and democracy. You know what I'm saying? So
I would only suggest one thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you guys.
No, man, go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
I would just suggest one thing. Be careful with the differentiation between labels and division. Labels are used as descriptors sometimes, but for the most part, it's lines of division. It's them against us. Now, while those are both labels, it's still the implication of the competition. It's still the implication of the good versus bad, the light versus dark. That is what divides us.
Yeah, I think that kind of ties into, I guess, our answer to, who was it? Was that Phil or was that Corey? He asked that question. I think it was Phil.
Yeah, it was Phil.
That was Phil.
I don't know. Phil was long-winded. I really lost it after about 5 minutes.
Yeah, so that's kind of why we were like, labels matter to a certain point. It only matters whether, I guess, your arguments are sound in regard to a specific issue or a specific outlook. That's really all that matters. So labels matter to a certain point. So that's why we answered it that way, because we kind of are in the same kind of space, because it automatically forces people into corners rather than forcing people to make sound arguments as to why they take a position and why they see the world a certain way.
All right, Gabriel.
Very good point.
That's all the time
thank you very much.
We appreciate you calling in. When we're thankful that you are partaking and enjoying the stream. Gladly that.
I'll be back.
Yeah, we're glad that Sharon pointed this out to you, and we hope that you do call back.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, man.
All right, man. Have a good night. All right, we're going to get to our last caller. We just have a few more minutes, and that is the 425 area code. You're on the air live with LTMB.
Hello?
Hello? Who this?
Hey.
I know, right?
Hey. You there?
Yeah, we're here.
Mike, well, hey, this is Schulte.
Who is this?
Schulte.
Schulte.
Oh, Schulte.
What's going on, Schulte?
Yeah.
How you doing?
Oh, snap.
Yeah, finally got talked to you guys. Tried to call you a bunch of times, but got through. This is cool. I'm glad to I got through. This is cool. I just wanted to tell you guys how fantastic your show is, and just how much I enjoy listening to your commentary and just what you do. And I don't have a whole lot to say. I don't like labels either, guys. I'm not into that. And I had some other stuff I wanted to say. I can't believe you guys thought I was a girl a couple weeks ago.
He ain't gonna let that go.
This is fucking Boris Schulte. This is that guy. So, these guys are funny. Yeah, I just wanted to plug Mike Figueredo. I'm walking out in the woods right now. I'm looking for the Spurs. I live out in Washington State, and I own some property out here. So, anyways, Mike Figueredo from the Humanist Report. He was how I heard you guys, and so I decided to give him a plug. He recommended your show, and he was right. It's a great show. I really enjoyed listening to it. And don't know. It sounds like you guys are out of time. I'll call some other time. When you guys are.
We got a couple minutes.
Yeah, man, we got a few.
If you got something to say, we got
all right.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not into labels either, guys. I don't know what I am nowadays. I really don't. I used to kind of identify as like, I don't know. I hate to say liberal. Because when I live like, there's not that many liberals. And it's pretty conservative. I live out in the country. And I'm just like, I'm like you guys, though. I kind of probably have a progressive view of things. And I'd like to think so. That's how I like that you guys are covering stories about just human rights, human justice. I think the racial issue today is like just as strong as it's ever been. It's like it was in the '60s. I don't think things have changed that much. Right. And I think that. What is that one lady, Marianne? What's her name? She wants reparations. She was talking about reparations. I think that's a great idea. Yeah. I think we need something like that because we've been. I think the darker races, brown people, black people, haven't been treated fairly. It's throughout history, and we need to help them, like so they can lead better lives, or they can get them out of prison too. It's like too many guys on prison. It's like a horrible thing that's going on. And the thing about one caller said something about, or somebody said something about white people are getting shot just as much, or something like that. It's not about black or white. There's a lot of black people being shot. There's a lot of white people being shot. There's a lot of people that are being killed by police officers today, and some of these cases they're just sad. I mean, I've cried plenty of times just thinking about this.
Well, let me cut you off there, Shelty, because you're about to get cut off in just like 2 seconds. So we appreciate you calling in, and we hope that you call back. Yeah, you just got cut off, but thank you for calling in tonight. Thank you to all our callers for calling in tonight. Shelty, I think he made a really strong point talking about how when we talk about the criminal actions of law enforcement, we bring up race because of the proportionality, because it definitely is a factor. But if you're talking about the crimes committed against people, then it doesn't matter if it's race. I mean, like the race of the person involved doesn't matter. We talk about it when it concerns somebody that's black, somebody that's brown, somebody that's white, somebody that's foreign. It doesn't matter who you are. It touches everybody. Now, it might touch black and brown people more, like I said, in proportionality, and it does affect brown and black people more, but it affects everybody, and everything should be addressed.
We just cover in situations where... like we thought, the victim was black, or who we thought what the victim was black.
Right. There's been multiple cases where the victim was white and was gunned down.
What's the last one we carried where there was an intruder inside their house?
Oh, yeah.
You remember his name? Was that Colorado? Was that in Colorado, or was that Washington?
Man.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
I can't remember where that was, but that was the case where there was a naked intruder. And there was a video. From the body cams, and the officers just shot from outside of the home into the home and shot the homeowner.
And they had the description of who were the assailants, and they had the description of who were the homeowners, but they came in and still shot the dude. A dude that was like kind of trying to hide behind a doorway, and he just shot through a door, through that doorway.
Yep, a white guy. I mean, look,
and it's funny.
Agreed, it happens to everybody, and it should all be addressed. We need reform across the board. It's not just for black people. It's not just for people of color. We need reform all the way around the country.
But isn't it interesting how people like the one in our chat will bring that up as if it evaporates the conversation.
Exactly. I'm like, as if we don't talk about anything else.
But guess what? Even if we didn't talk about anything else, all you're doing is saying, hey, we got to talk about those too. You're actually making it to where the conversation should continue. Because if you're saying, well,
more white people,
get
really okay. Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. Like all you're saying is it's worse than what is made out to be. Because all these people are being affected. All you're kind of giving credence to is the fact that, or the idea, fact in my opinion, but the idea that the criminal justice system needs to be reformed. That's all you're doing by bringing those extra people up.
See, nobody's creating the situations. When it happens to a black person, it's addressed. When it happens to a white person, it's addressed. Nobody's creating the situations. It just, like we said, when you're talking about proportionality, it happens more. The rate is more when you're talking about people of color. But all of it needs to be addressed if we want to reach a situation where law enforcement is held accountable for their actions. The case that we just covered earlier today with Antwon Rose being shot in his back and deemed to be guilty of his own killing, that's not what accountability looks like at all. He's responsible for being in that vehicle. Okay? Maybe he knew what was gonna go down with the drive-by shooting. Maybe he didn't. We'll never know. Not at this point. Maybe if I believe his name was Zywan Hester, if he talks, he hasn't talked yet, but maybe he can shed some light at some point as to what Antwon Rose knew and what he didn't know. It doesn't matter. Because no matter what Antwon Rose was doing in that vehicle, when he popped out of it and ran away from the police officer, he didn't put that police officer's life in jeopardy. It's total bullshit for that police officer to say anything different. And like you said about his perception, about his understanding of the events, this is not somebody that's qualified to be a police officer. If you cannot understand that a threat is not there, that people are not running towards you as juxtaposed to people running away from you. If it all looks the same to you, people running to you, people running away from you. If all that looks the same and you perceive all of that to be a threat on your life, there's going to be more killings along the way for this officer.
Yeah. I want to clarify something, especially about labels that I think needs to be clarified. I do agree with one of our habitual viewers, and that's Lisa Catlet, sorry. Somewhere up in the chat, she did say labels are descriptions. And I do agree with that. That's why I say labels matter to an extent, because labels are theoretically supposed to be descriptions. But in our conversation with Schultze, it kind of highlighted how that's not always the case, because freedom and democracy are labels, right? But and that has a description, but is that how it actually plays out in real time? It doesn't. So yes, labels are supposed to be theoretically descriptions, and it allows us to, communicate and engage with each other in a more efficient way. So we know what we're talking about. But unfortunately, when language has been twisted and distorted, man, labels is a muddy, labels, like just relying on labels solely is some extremely muddy, murky waters. You know what I'm saying?
Because even liberal right now in 2019, you take liberal to mean something that is not very genuine. You know, it's not the same as saying somebody is progressive. I don't think anybody should run away from the term liberal, even in 2019. I know that somebody like Hillary Clinton will consider themselves a liberal, somebody like Kamala Harris, somebody like Nancy Pelosi. These are all liberals. And so to, associate yourself with those types of individuals is like, well, no, I kind of want to pick something else to where you will deduce that I'm different.
Because
I'm to the left of them.
It's been co-opted.
Yeah.
It's been co-opted.
I think I'm not afraid of the word liberal.
Because Bill Maher calls himself a liberal.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of the word liberal. Because liberal can mean different things. Again, if you want to say progressive, that has an added definition that has like you must feel this type of way about these certain issues that, just saying liberal wouldn't really define. But yeah, liberal doesn't bother me. Just describe what kind of liberal you are, It doesn't bother me. Conservative bothers me. In 2019, conservative, how far conservative has gone In 2019, oh yeah, that bothers me.
Or are we just saying what they call conservatism?
What they call
So
conservatism,
yeah.
what that means in 2019.
What that means to them.
Yes.
How they define it.
Not what I said.
And how they activate it.
Yes.
And how they engage with
This
other
is their
people.
own description. This is their own definition of what conservatism is. Me looking at that, I'm like, oh, okay, I see you. I definitely see you.
That's right, Lisa. You're right about that. We don't have to be nice about it. We really don't. I think that kind of civility only does one thing. It does a few things, but it does one main thing. It allows people to stay in their comfort zone. That's all it does. This whole like fake civility. Not civility in general as a concept, because it's valid as a concept, but fake civility. Like be nice to these people. People aren't going to change because they don't have your values.
Right.
Like we're automatically assuming that, hey, if we just present good arguments, these people will change. No, I don't think that's the case. Some people just need to be ignored because I think there's some people who are hell-bent on ruling over other people. We have this assumption that certain people care about equality like us, and they don't. They don't. We just got to get over that.
Carver, if progressives are the nutters on the left, who are the nutters on the right? If that's true, what would you describe the nutters on the right to be? And Maggie's, as liberal is the opposite of conservative, right? It's a little bit too simplistic. In some ways, you could kind of say that, but that's really just a very... that's really just on the surface. You know? There's many things that you can associate to be liberal that you can also associate to be conservative.
Yeah, because I think like I don't even think that term conservative has its origins in United States politics. I think it has its origin in French politics to describe people who wanted to keep things the way they are. And then liberal, again, as a word, there's not a problem with it. The root of that word is libre, which means to free or emancipate. And the suffix al just means like to fit that category or to be in the likeness of. So technically it's just liberal is saying free person or someone who advocates for freeness or embodies freedom. That's all.
I mean, we have many liberals that prop up the private healthcare industry. And we just talked about that earlier with Nancy Pelosi and this whole effort to strengthen the ACA, lower costs. Don't go as far as Medicare for all. No, we want to protect the ACA and just do that and that's it. But we also have conservatives in the Republican Party who obviously, because they want to dismantle the ACA, they want to protect and strengthen the private health industry, the private healthcare industry too. So they're both doing the same thing. They're doing it in different ways, but this is an effort that liberals and conservatives are engaged in. So they in some areas they do things different ways, but it has ultimately the same effect. So yeah, to just dumb it down to, liberal, conservative, it's too simplistic. You have to reach down a little bit deeper than that. But all right, so how long have we been going on this stream? This is about just under 2.5 hours.
And that's not counting the first 10 minutes.
Oh yeah, the first 10 minutes of the I don't know.
That was rocky.
It doesn't. I don't understand. One time every show, that's what happens. It doesn't make sense. I don't understand. And then we haven't had any problems since then. It just cuts off, cuts back on, and then it's. I don't get it, man. But
this time it stuttered though.
Yeah,
like
we have no idea what the technical problems are, but I know it's affecting. The audience, people that come to watch the show.
Yeah, I know.
I would be annoyed by that too. But we appreciate you being here for this episode, this stream. We do have some supporters, some contributors that donated to the program tonight. There's Charles Calvin, donated a couple times, and he suggested to read the book Shattered.
Is that the book about Hillary Clinton coming up with the hacked narrative because she lost the election? Is that correct? That's the only book that I know of that's well, there's a lot of books that are entitled Shattered, but this is a political talk show,
Yeah.
so that's the only thing I can think of. I'll address that after you read all the other stupid chat comments.
Aaron Barnett is what? It sounds like you said stupid chat.
Freudian, maybe.
Yeah. Aaron Barnett. I will be looking to your show to help me understand the future of our politics in this country. I appreciate your perspectives. Always appreciate seeing you in the chat, Aaron Barnett. Always appreciate you watching the show and supporting us. We thank you very much for it. And we also had Calvin Darden, who said, great show. So, again, we appreciate all of you, whether you're watching, commenting, or you're calling in. Definitely want to shout out our callers one more time: Phil, Corey, Tony, Gabriel, and Schultze. Thank you all for heightening the level of this stream. Adding your voice to the stream, asking questions, making comments, just giving us a lot more to discuss from your perspective. So we always advocate for more people to get involved and call us up, because we would love to hear from you. Another shout out to our patrons on patreon.com. We do have an account on patreon.com. If you would like to contribute, whatever you can, if you want to, if that's something that you want to do and support our show, you can go to patreon.com/LTMB and become a patron.
That's the virtual bank account, basically.
That is.
That's a virtual bank account.
That's how we're doing things. That's how we're trying to upgrade anything that has to do with this platform. So we appreciate everybody out there that gives their hard-earned money every single month to us. Go ahead. You said you wanted to...
Yeah, I got a question for people who kind of push that narrative. It was Hillary Clinton who kind of came up with this hack narrative as an excuse, I guess, to why she lost. And she's had all the excuses in the world. We already know that. But again, I think that's jumping the shark a bit because you have to tell me how a narrative pushed by Hillary Clinton resulted in an investigation. That's a big gap there. Hillary Clinton said something. Oh, that's when the special counsel came. You see what I'm saying? What's the explanation between how those two things tie together? You know what I'm saying? Because if that's the case and it was after the election, it means it's primarily during Trump's administration. So what you're telling me is Hillary Clinton, a lifelong Democrat, kind of DNC stooge, convinced Christopher Wray, who is a Republican, who is a Trump nominee, to continue investigation. Convinced Mueller, a lifelong Republican, to continue an investigation. Convinced the DOJ, full of lifelong Republicans, Rod Rosenstein, to continue an investigation. You still haven't explained that. I need people to tie those two things together. And also explain the whole Mike Pompeo thing, who is also a Republican, who has also pushed that Russia has been hacking. So there's all these people who are not Democrats, who are not associated with the DNC, that are pushing this. So it kind of is a false narrative. You can hate Hillary Clinton all you want. There's enough meat to chew on that bone, but it is essentially a false narrative.
Rosenstein must be in the pocket of the Democratic Party.
He must be in the pocket.
Mueller must be in the pocket of the Democratic Party. Christopher Wray must be in the pocket of the Democratic Party. The whole FBI, they would have to be in the pocket of the Democratic Party. All of this, it's nonsense. Look, there are many voices out there that do believe that Hillary Clinton's campaign was impacted by Russian collusion. There are many people, Hillary supporters, there are many people that have been, dabbling in that kind of narrative. Many people. And Hillary Clinton, I can recall there was one thing that we talked about associated with Hillary Clinton during the campaign. And she said this, I can't remember exactly the time that she said it, but I think she said something like it on the debate, during one of the debates with Donald Trump. And she said something like, any type of... She said something like interference in terms of electronic interference, like hacking and stuff like that, would produce it would produce a similar result as if you attacked us physically. you attacked us with like weapons. You remember that quote that she had?
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact quote that she had.
I know. I mean, you're just kind of like kind of summarizing it.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly the way that she said it, but it was a very troublesome quote. And I can, like, she was trying to sell something at that point and say that, hey, this is a real problem. You know, Russians are hacking, this and that. She was basically setting the stage for people to dabble in that type of narrative, like the Russian. Hey, if I don't win, hey, you know, the Russians did it, right? You can kind of go there based on like what she said, but it does not mean that based on what she said that launched the investigation.
Exactly. You have to kind of piece the two together, and a lot of people like to bring up the WikiLeaks thing again. You have to understand that the intelligence community as a whole doesn't like WikiLeaks. So if you're trying to establish this like somehow this battle between the DNC and WikiLeaks, you're woefully incorrect, because within that same event that Mike Pompeo was talking at, he actually mentioned WikiLeaks. And I'll say the event name again. It was Foundation for Defense and Democracies. It's for national security. He actually mentioned WikiLeaks as being kind of like an enemy of the state. So everybody trying to pit WikiLeaks against the DNC, you're wrong. He said he didn't like Julian Assange. This is Mike Pompeo, a Republican, current Secretary of State. He pretty much put WikiLeaks in the same category as Hezbollah, ISIS, and North Korea and China. So yeah, so it's like people are kind of shaping narratives that don't really hold up. So I'm just here to just pour water on that cotton candy. You know what I mean? It just.
All right. All right. We're gonna shut this down. We're gonna try to do some testing before the next program on Thursday, so that we don't have the same type of technical difficulties that we have had for the last
4 weeks.
I don't know about 4 weeks. It
maybe 4 shows.
4, 5, 6 shows, maybe something like that. But we got to get that rectified. We did see Marianne Williamson this weekend on Saturday.
Right,
she was in South Carolina. Actually, she's still in South Carolina. And so we were able to talk with her and talked about the possibility of setting up an interview too. So we're in the process of trying to get that done. At this point, we don't know if it will be just live on the scene, or if it will be something that we'll do on the show, or maybe a recorded thing, you know, through this software or anything like that. But she is going to be here until Friday, I believe. She's going to be back in Columbia on Friday. So that will be something that like I said, that's something that we're trying to get done.
I would say I will give props to our campaign manager, or a person that controls or is in control of like her event planning. Because I don't think it was a coincidence that she went to the event that we saw her at, which was the cornbread. That's right, cornbread festival. I didn't know what to expect. I've never been. I've been to different festivals in the city we live in, and it was like 99.9999999% black people there. I didn't know that.
I told my mother it was like 98%.
98%.
Yeah.
You were being generous.
I was being generous. There was a few white people.
Yeah, because that's just cornbread festival in the South. I thought that would be more.
I did too.
But see, it probably has something to do with who is the organizers and who puts it on. So therefore, that is going to determine who shows up, because Benedict College is there, and that's a HBCU.
Right.
And so I do think it's interesting that I didn't know that was an event that was mostly attended by black people.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. We live here, she didn't live here. So whoever is her campaign manager that controls her event planning, they knew that. And there was a reason why she was there. Yeah. We all know her message.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And in the Democratic Party, in the Democratic primary in the Democratic Party for South Carolina, in the Democratic primary, black people make up the majority of it in South Carolina. So if you're running for president as a Democrat, you're definitely going to have to talk to black people. I mean, that's going to be your focus. That's going to have to be your focus in South Carolina. So, anyway, but like I said, we're trying to get that set up, and hopefully we'll have that done shortly. Still have plans to talk to Andrew Yang as well, and hopefully get him on the show. So we have some plans, and
maybe we could get him to explain himself on certain things we've seen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we got one issue with him. That's that electoral college. I really do want to hear an explanation there, because. Hey, you can only say so much in a
He did.
in a
He
tweet.
did have some things to say about immigration too that were a little bit sketchy.
Well, hey, we give him a opportunity to explain himself. Most of the things that he talks about, we are definitely for. But hey, can't I guess just automatically assume we're going to be supportive of every single thing that a candidate is, supportive of or mentioning as part of their platform or their ideas or whatever. So I still think he is better than most of the rest of them. So anyway, with that, hope everybody has a very good night. We will be back in 2 days. That will be on Thursday, March 28th, 2019. We look forward to it. Everybody take care. Let the madness begin. Peace out.